Hello, welcome back to the Caxton House Kitchen. Today I'm going to be making bubble and squeak. And what are you making, Kev?
I'm going to make some traditional mince pies with a sweet short crust pastry.
Sounds amazing. So, in case you haven't guessed, it's Christmas, and one of the leftover dishes that we always used to have when I was a child on Boxing Day was bubble and squeak. And basically, it's just your leftover potatoes and any leftover veg that you got. Today, I've got carrots and sprouts, but cabbage, anything you've got left over from the day before works well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain off the potatoes and I'm going to mash them up together with my veg. Right, so I've roughly mashed my potato and I added a bit of butter. You don't have to do that, but you can add butter or you can add milk if you wanted your mash to be a little bit fluffier. After I've mashed my veg together with the potato, that's when I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Alright, so I've mashed all of the veg together like this. In this pan here, I'm just going to warm up some oil and some butter. And in this pan, I'm going to heat up some oil. In this pan, I'm going to cook a portion of your bubble and squeak. And I always think it goes pretty well with a fried egg. So when this is nearly done, I'm then going to fry an egg in this pan. All right, so I'm going to take a small portion of the bubble and squeak and put it in this pan. The butter's bubbling away nicely here. So I'm just going to push that down a little bit. I find it's easier to do this in small batches, because if you fill up the whole pan, it's pretty difficult to turn it over halfway through. So I'm just going to leave that to fry off for a bit, and like I said, when I've turned this over, then I'm going to switch on this pan and put the fried egg in. Alright, so I've started another couple of batches of the bubble and squeak in my pan, and I'm just tapping it around the sides, and it helps to keep the mixture together because it can fall apart a little bit. The other thing it does is it makes it into quite a nice round shape, so it almost looks like a frosty or something. And then I'm going to have a little look under here. Yeah, it's not quite as brown as I want it yet, so I'm going to leave it for a couple more minutes and then I'm going to flip it over until it's cooked. Right, so I flip these over and that's the kind of colour that I like on them. Obviously, because the vegetables are already cooked, it is just a matter of personal preference how dark or light you want them. So I'm cooking the other side now, and so I'll stuck the oil on and I'm going to cook a fried egg. Right, so I've heated up my oil in this pan, and I've put my egg in. I'm going to fry this off for a couple of minutes, and then once this one's done, I'll serve this, and then I'm going to make myself some scrambled eggs. You could make it with an omelette or just anything else that you fancy. Okay, so the first bubble and squeak that I put in here is ready to serve. So I'm going to get that out. And along with the fried egg, which I'm going to place on the top. And I'm going to serve that immediately. Kevin, there you go.
Lovely.
Eat it whilst it's hot.
Fantastic.
Right, so Kev's got fried egg. I prefer scrambled, so I've made a little bit of scrambled egg for mine. So tuck in, Kev, let me know what you think.
This looks delicious. Perfect hangover food.
Oh, it's lovely. It's good, isn't it?
Lovely. Very nice.
And that's all just leftovers.
Very nice. Okay, so the ingredients we're going to be using today to make our mince pies, we're going to be using mincemeat, which you can get in jars in most supermarkets, or probably every supermarket now. For the filling, we're going to use an orange as well, which will combine with the mincemeat, and I'll show you how to prepare that. For the pastry, the sweet pastry, we're going to need some unsalted butter that's fresh from the fridge and has been cubed, and it needs to be chilled to make the pastry. Some plain flour, some caster sugar, and then a couple of eggs. One's going to go into the pastry and the other egg is going to be used to glaze the top of the little individual pies. And then some icing sugar to dust on the little pies at the end. So first job is to put the oven on and start preparing the pastry. Okay, so let's get started with the pastry. So taking my flour, sieving this into a bowl to make sure there's no lumps, and you can do it a little bit at a time. and just tap it. You don't need to create a snowstorm in the kitchen, so just tap it and keep it all going into the bowl. Like so. Maybe I should start singing Christmas carols as I'm doing this.
Oh, that would be nice.
There we go. I'll save you all from me singing Christmas carols. There we go. Do a tap dance. Okay, there we go. Nearly there. Okay. Then take your butter, and this needs to be chilled out of the refrigerator, so just sprinkle that in, and it's been diced as well. And then a good tip is to add all your dry ingredients together, so you can add your caster sugar now. Put all that in. And then the next job is to combine these, and you want to get the consistency of fine, sort of like breadcrumbs. So the best way to do this is to just pinch the butter and combine it with the flour and the sugar. And this is going to take you a little bit of time. You can't rush this at all. So just kind of like just keep flaking those, and I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of just pinching them together and kind of, I don't know, sort of making little crumbs. Okay, so now I've combined the butter and the flour and the sugar together. You can see it's gone into these kind of like small sort of breadcrumbs. Don't worry if you get the odd little sort of like lump that's not quite small. You can kind of like mix that in. It'll all melt and it'll all combine together once it's in the oven. The next step is to add the egg. So taking a knife, you can crack the egg and then put the whole thing in. And then with the knife, you can start to combine that into the mixture. So you're just mixing it all the way through. So now that my egg is combined with the flour, the butter and the sugar, you'll see it'll start to come together now with that liquid. So sleeves up, and you can start to bring that together into a dough. So you're scraping everything up that's in the bowl and combining it with all of it there, and then you'll kind of start to see that you're getting beginnings of a pastry. So that's all kind of like starting to combine now, which is great. So just kind of work it through your hands, scrape any little bits that are kind of in the bottom of the bowl, and you can add those in. Let's turn it round, so put that back in the bowl. Okay, so give your hands a wipe, because your hands are going to be a little bit messy after handling the dough. You can sort of like give your little surface a bit of a wipe down as well. And then a really good tip now is to get some cling film. Get yourself a sheet and then put your dough in the cling film and wrap it up. Now, this needs to go into the fridge again to rest, and it'll also chill it, and it means that it'll be much more easier to roll out when you get to making the pastry. Okay, so now I'm going to zest the orange, and we'll be adding this to the mincemeat as part of the filling, and it gives it that lovely Christmassy, lovely fragrant feel. I've got an orange zester here, and basically the trick is to just drag it over the skin of the orange, and you'll start seeing you kind of get these lovely sort of like shredded peelings almost. So that's one way of doing it. Don't go down to the very white bit of the orange skin, the pith, or else that's quite bitter. That it's just the outer skin that you want. So you can gather that together. Alternatively, if you've not got a zester, you can use a grater. Small setting, and then you can just finally grate your orange on there. Again, making sure that you don't grate too much into the paler part of the pith. So you're just taking out the outer edge skin of the orange, so you can see just there. Okay, so now I've zested my orange, and you can see it's gone into kind of like little sort of like thin shreds. You now want to combine that with your mincemeat, and I've got 600 grams of mincemeat here out of the jar. So just pop in your orange, get all the little bits out, and then you just want to kind of stir that in and combine the orange with the mincemeat. And it's not smell-o-vision because the smells are absolutely delicious. There you go, that's the filling. So the next stage is to take the pastry out of the fridge and wrap it in the cling film, so you can unwrap that now. And we're just going to use half of this to start off with. So chop your pastry in half. Take your sieve and just put a little bit of flour down to start off with while you just wrap your pastry. That can be set aside or put back into the fridge while you're doing the pastry for the base. So sieve plenty of flour onto your work surface. And then you can start to kind of shape the pastry and just kind of get it covered in a little bit of the flour. Get it into a nice sort of like round shape. Then get your rolling pin and give that a bit of a sieve of flour as well. And then you can start to roll out. So, don't press down too hard, just kind of like do it softly, and then you can take your pastry, you can turn it, and you probably want to roll this out to around about the sort of width of like 0.5 centimeters or the width of like a pound coin, for example. Keep dusting as you're rolling. I need a little bit more flour here. So, sprinkle it on. Roll out and just evenly try and get the flour rolled out. That's looking round about the right sort of width now. So then we'll go on to the next step, which is cutting out the pastry. Okay, so on mince pies, we're going to look at two different ways of making them. I've got a silicone baking tray here, which you can use, and I've also got some little individual tin little pie dishes here that can be used as well. So the first process is to lightly grease these up with a little bit of butter on a little bit of paper or a little bit of tin foil. And you can go in there and then just a tiny bit, you just need to just grease around each of the little dishes. And I'll do the same with these little pie dishes as well. I mean, most things are non-stick these days, but I'm always kind of a little bit sort of like, better safe than sorry. So, then your pastry that's been rolled out, and it's around about a pound coin sort of like thickness or 0.5 centimetres thick. You can then take a cutter. So I've got a 7 centimetre round cutter here. And basically, you just need to pat it down onto your pastry and just go all the way around. Kind of as close together as you can, but obviously not overlapping. Put yourself a few of those off, and then you need to get a spatula or a knife, and then just lift the little individual circles up, and then they can go into your greased tray, and you'll see that they'll pop in quite happily like that. So I just go all the way around and pop those into my greased individual compartments. And then for the little cake tins that we had, exactly the same technique. Just pop that in and then just very gently push it into the cake tin. It doesn't matter if it's kind of not perfect all the way around, because when you put the little lid on, that will make it all look neat. If there are any little bits that are going over the sides, you can always just trim that off with a knife. So just continue going on. So you'll have lots of little bits that are left over. You can then take those leftover bits, and again, these should reform easily, and then you can roll them back out again like you did with the first ball of dough, and then just keep using up all the dough basically. Okay, so now you can see I've lined my baking tray with the circular cut-out pastry rounds, and I've done the same here with the little pie dishes. So the next step is to put your mincemeat mixture into the little individual dishes, and the best way to do this is to get a spoon, and this is a dessert spoon. So get yourself a nice heaped spoonful, get yourself another spoon, and then you want to just put roughly a sort of dessert spoon's worth of the mixture into each of the pie cases. Again, better to put less in than too much at this point. You can always add a little bit more. And just go around. I'll show you in a minute. So you can see roughly what you're trying to achieve there. You're trying to just filling up those little cases. And with the little pie metal dishes, same again, you can kind of see just kind of like a nice little dollop in there. Okay, so next we're going to do the lids for the pies, so I'll show you that after I've rolled out the pastry. So I've rolled out the rest of my pastry, and now I'm going to make the little lids to go on the mince pies. So exactly the same technique as we did before, so just cutting out the circles, go all the way around. I've beaten an egg, and then I'm going to use a pastry brush, and I'm just going to paint around the edge of the pastry that's in the dish, well, in the baking tray. And then this will kind of act as a sort of glue for when you're putting your little lid on the pie. Then you can take one of your lids, pop it on top and push it down. Now, a good little tip is to get something that's kind of got a slightly pointed edge. I've got like a pointed edge on here, and you can just go around and just push the pastry lid edge onto the pastry case that's below. So you get that kind of look there. You can decorate your little thing. We've got some little cutouts. We've got a little star here, so we can cut a little star out and then take that out. a little bit of your egg wash. And you can brush the top and then pop your little star on top or whatever you've cut out. And this is a great little activity for you and the kids. And then give it all a good egg wash so it's completely covered. And then just repeat that process all the way around on the little ones that are done in the tray. If you're doing the little individual like metal pie trays like we've got here, exactly the same process. Put a little lid on top, and then you can press it round with your fingers. And then you can take a knife and you can just trim it off all the way around there. A bit fiddly these, but kind of get the idea. Again, if you want to decorate these, you can. Okay, so you can see now that I've put the little lids on the little pies. So now I've glazed the top with the egg wash, and I'm going to take a fork and just do 2 little sort of pricks with a fork each side of my star. And this will create little air holes so that when the pie's in the oven, the steam inside will be able to be released without hopefully knocking off your lid. So do that on the little pie shaped ones, and you can see I've already done these ones here on the ones that are in the little baking tray. So we can get these babies into the oven now. Around about 25 minutes to 30 minutes, I would say, but just keep your eye on them. You just basically want to kind of like cook them off and get the top nice and golden brown. I normally put them in probably about a gas mark 5, which is about 175 degrees Celsius. So now we've popped our little pies out of our baking tray. It's a good idea to let them cool. We've got a rack here, but you can let them just cool on a cool surface. But we've put them out on the rack, so they're all out of their little cases. So the last thing to do is to give them a sprinkling of icing sugar. We've got this very, very posh icing sugar sprinkler here that you just do that with, and it's just a nice little light dusting, makes them look lovely and Christmassy. Or if you've not got one of those posh sprinkly things, you can just use a sieve with some of your icing sugar in and just give it a little tap. Actually, I like the sieve better. I think it's a bit more even. There we go. So there we go, giving Mr. Kipling a run for his money with our own made little mince pies. Diane's had to dash off, sadly, but I'm definitely going to leave her a couple of these to enjoy, but I'll just have a little taste of one while we're here. So, bottoms up.
Merry Christmas
and a Happy New Year.
See you next year.
Bye.
Take care.